I almost didn't pick up the phone. It was late. The number wasn't saved, and after this many years doing this, I've learned that 90% of the calls that come in after midnight are nothing. But something told me to answer this one, and the second I heard the voice on the other end, the second the person identified who they represented and why they were calling me specifically, I knew that the next 48 hours in the Bay Area were about to get absolutely insane. Warriors fans, I need you to take a breath, because what I'm about to tell you is going to start a war in this fan base. And I mean that literally. Half of you are going to love it. Half of you are going to think the front office has completely lost its mind. But before you decide which half you're in, I'm begging you to watch this entire video all the way to the end, because the call I got tonight, combined with what Charania said on ESPN just a few hours later, paints a picture that changes everything about how this franchise is trying to send Stephen Curry out a champion. And the most important detail, the one that explains why this is even being discussed in the first place, I'm saving for the very end, so don't you dare leave early. Hey, what's up everyone? Real quick before we get into everything, that like button is literally what determines if this reaches hundreds or thousands of fans. Takes 1 second, but makes a huge impact on the channel's growth. Just smash that like button right now. It's the easiest thing you can do, but honestly, the biggest way to support this content, every single like pushes this further, so hit it now. Here's the situation, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, because you lived it. This past season was, by any honest measure, a disaster for the Golden State Warriors. 37 wins, 45 losses, the third highest payroll in the entire league. And what did it get you? An 8th seed play-in game in Phoenix where the Suns beat you 111-96, and the season was over before the real playoffs even began. No second round, no conference finals, nothing. Just Steph Curry and Draymond Green walking off an opposing floor one more time, getting hugged by Steve Kerr, with the whole basketball world wondering out loud whether the dynasty is finally, truly, completely dead. And the injuries? My God, the injuries. Curry, 38 years old, missed 39 games this season with a knee that the team says was just overused and wear and tear. Jimmy Butler missed 44 games. And now Butler is rehabbing a torn ACL and is going to miss a major chunk of next season. Moses Moody ruptured his patellar tendon and could miss most of the year too. The roster is old, the roster is broken, and Steve Kerr stood up in his exit interview and said the quiet part out loud. This team needs younger legs. This team needs to get bigger. This team has guys who can't even play in back-to-backs anymore. So now think about the spot the front office is in. Mike Dunleavy and Joe Lacob are sitting there this summer with one mission, and it is not a 5-year rebuild. It is not a slow, patient reset. The mission is simple, and it is desperate. Get Stephen Curry one more real shot, one more legitimate run at a championship before the greatest shooter who ever lived runs out of healthy seasons. Curry himself has said he wants to play at least 20 years in this league, and this past season was only his 17th, so he's not going anywhere. But every single person inside that building knows that the clock is screaming, and that you cannot waste another year of prime effort Curry on a play-in team. They need to swing. They need to swing hard. And that, Warriors fans, is exactly where this phone call comes in. Let me tell you what I was told, because this is the part that's going to get the comment section on fire, the agent. And I'm not going to say more than that about who it was, because I protect the people who trust me. The agent told me plainly that there is a real, active, advancing conversation about Rudy Gobert coming to the Golden State Warriors. Not a rumor, not a "the Warriors checked in" throwaway line. A real conversation with real momentum, driven by a Minnesota Timberwolves team that has decided it is done with the Gobert experiment and is ready to build its future around Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and their young center, Joan Berringer. Minnesota lost to San Antonio in the second round, looked at the roster, and concluded that a 34-year-old center making $35 million a year is not the path to a title. They want to move him. And the Warriors, the team Kerr just said needs to get bigger, the team with no real answer at center, the team desperate to maximize Curry's last window, are right there in the conversation. And then like clockwork, a few hours after I hung up that phone, Shams Charania goes on ESPN and stakes his entire credibility on it. He didn't hedge, he said it's happening. Rudy Gobert to Golden State. Now I already know what a huge chunk of you are thinking, because I thought it too the moment I heard it. Gobert? On the Warriors are the small ball team. The Warriors invented the modern 5-out, switch everything, death lineup style of basketball. Why on earth would they bring in a traditional drop coverage center who can't switch out to the perimeter? And that, my friends, is exactly the question that makes this so fascinating. So stay with me, because the answer is the whole story. The Warriors won championships with small ball when they had prime Draymond Green flying around as a small ball 5, and prime Klay Thompson and prime Andre Iguodala on the wings. That team doesn't exist anymore. Draymond is 36, the legs are gone. And here's the dirty secret the Warriors have been hiding for years now. They get murdered on the glass and murdered at the rim because they have no size. Kerr said it himself, they need to get bigger. So the question isn't whether Gobert fits the old Warriors. The old Warriors are dead. The question is whether Gobert fits what the Warriors have to become to survive. And the answer might be yes. Picture it for a second. Picture Stephen Curry running around screens with Rudy Gobert setting them. Curry has spent his entire career making average screen setters look like Hall of Famers. Now give him the best, biggest, most physical screener of his generation. The Curry-Gobert pick and roll with the gravity of the greatest shooter in history, pulling 2 and 3 defenders toward him, freeing Gobert to roll into wide open space and catch lobs and finish at the rim. That is a genuinely terrifying action. And on the other end, finally, the Warriors would have a rim protector, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year standing in the paint, erasing mistakes, cleaning up everything that the aging perimeter guys can no longer contain. You put Gobert behind a defense and suddenly Draymond doesn't have to be the last line every single possession. Suddenly Curry can gamble for steals knowing there's a wall behind him. This past season, even in a reduced role, Gobert gave Minnesota 11 points, 11.5 rebounds, and a block and a half a game on 68% shooting, and he made the all-defensive first team for the 8th time in his career. The 8th time! The defense doesn't disappear because the team around him changed. The defense is who he is. And I want to give you a little history lesson here, because it matters, and because the people screaming that Gobert doesn't fit the Warriors have a very short memory. The most successful version of the Warriors dynasty wasn't always 5 guys under 6'8" chucking threes. Go back and remember how this team operated when it needed rim protection and rebounding. They brought in size when it mattered. They've had rim running, lob catching, screen setting centers play meaningful minutes on championship level Warriors teams before. The genius of the Warriors system was never that they refused to play size. It was that they used whatever pieces they had to maximize Curry's gravity. And right now, the piece they're missing, the piece that has been killing them on the glass and at the rim for years, is a true anchor. Steve Kerr is the same coach who knows how to scheme around a roll man. Put a screener like Gobert in Kerr's offense next to the greatest shooter alive, and you are not betraying the Warriors' identity. You are giving Kerr a tool he hasn't had in this twilight stretch, a vertical threat that turns Curry's gravity into free points at the rim. Now think about the Western Conference road, because this is where it gets real. To win in the West, the Warriors have to get through the kinds of teams that ended their season and ended their recent runs. Oklahoma City and the back-to-back MVP. San Antonio with their generational young big. Minnesota with Anthony Edwards. The Lakers with Luka. Every single one of those teams either has elite size, an elite downhill attacker, or both. And the way the Warriors have been losing, the way they lost in that play-in game to Phoenix, the way the season slipped away game after game, is the same way every aging team loses. They get outsized, out-rebounded, and out-muscled at the rim in the moments that matter. A 4-time Defensive Player of the Year doesn't fix the Warriors' age, but he absolutely fixes the specific thing their age has been costing them, which is the ability to defend the paint and finish defensive possessions with a rebound. That is the single most fixable weakness on this roster, and Gobert is the single best fix in the league. That's the math the front office is staring at right now. But I promised you honesty, and honesty means telling you the part the front office is terrified of. The money. This is where it gets ugly, and this is part of why this is so controversial. The Warriors already have around $181 million committed to a 9-man roster against a salary cap projected around $165 million, with the second apron sitting at around $222 million. Do you understand what that means? The Warriors are jammed up against the most punishing financial restrictions in the entire league. Taking on a salary the size of Gobert's is not a simple thing. It would require sending out real significant money. We're talking about the kinds of contracts and pieces that, when you start moving them, change the entire shape of the roster, and it would push the Warriors deeper into a financial corner that limits every other thing they can do. So when the agent called me, and when Shams put his name on it, what they're really telling you is that the Warriors are at least willing to consider blowing past every financial guardrail to chase one more title with Curry. That is how desperate this situation is. That is how loud the clock is ticking. And let's talk about Draymond Green for a second, because this is a delicate, fascinating piece of the puzzle. Draymond has a player option, and most people expect him to come back because he wants to finish his career alongside Curry. But Draymond has been the small ball 5 for this team for a decade. He has built his entire defensive identity on being the anchor, the quarterback, the guy in the middle calling out everything. So what happens when you bring in Rudy Gobert, another guy who needs to be near the rim, another defensive alpha? Some people will tell you it's a clash. I'm going to tell you it might be the opposite. Imagine Draymond Green freed up to roam, to switch, to defend the perimeter and gamble and create chaos, with Gobert behind him as the safety net. Draymond's playmaking on offense, Gobert's rim protection on defense. On paper, those two skill sets don't overlap, they complete each other. Draymond has even talked openly this past season about the uncertainty around his future, about conversations he's had with Kerr and Curry, and management about change. So the idea that the Warriors are willing to fundamentally reshape their front court is not coming out of nowhere. The willingness to change is already there. Now here's where I have to be straight with you about the risk, because anybody who sells you this as a slam dunk, no downside move is lying to you. Gobert is about to turn 34. Steve Kerr said this team needs younger legs, and Gobert is not younger legs. There is a real argument that the smart, disciplined move for the Warriors is to use that lottery pick they're about to have for the first time since 2021. Get younger, get cheaper, and build a bridge to the post-Curry era. There is a real argument that throwing an enormous contract for an aging center onto an already ancient roster is exactly the kind of short-sighted win-now panic move that has gotten teams into salary cap prison for years. I'm not going to pretend that argument doesn't exist. It does. And smart people in that front office are making it right now, tonight, as we speak. This is a genuine fork in the road for the franchise. Get younger and patient, or go all in one last time. And according to the call I got and the report Shams dropped, the Warriors are leaning all in. Because here's the thing about Stephen Curry, and this is the emotional core of the whole story. There is no scenario in which the Warriors tell Stephen Curry, the man who built this dynasty, the man who delivered 4 championships to the Bay Area, that they are going to spend his final healthy seasons developing a rookie and tanking for the future. That is not who this organization is. They owe him better than that. And Curry, for his part, has spent his whole career being the guy other stars want to play with. He's the recruiting pitch. He's the reason a player like Gobert, who could go to a contender, who could chase a ring anywhere, would look at Golden State and say yes. Playing next to the greatest shooter ever in that system, with that coaching staff and that championship culture, is exactly the kind of opportunity that makes a veteran star pick up the phone. And maybe, just maybe, that's why an agent was calling me at midnight. And think about what it would mean for Curry specifically, on the floor, every single night. Curry has spent the back half of his career without a true lob threat, without a screener who commands 2 defenders, without a rim protector to cover for the gambles he and Draymond love to take. Give him that, even now, even at 38, and you don't just make the Warriors bigger. You unlock a version of Curry's game that has been dormant for years. The 2-man game alone would force defenses into impossible choices on every single possession. That's the kind of thing that turns a play-in team back into a problem nobody wants to see in a 7-game series. So let me get to the part I told you I was saving, the detail that explains this whole thing, the reason this is even on the table, and it comes back to one word: window. The Warriors don't have a 5-year window, they don't have a 3-year window. With Curry at 38, with Butler hurt and aging, with Draymond 36, they have a 1-year window, maybe 2 if the basketball gods are kind. And when your window is that small, the normal rules of roster building stop applying. You don't worry about how the contract looks in 3 years, because in 3 years this iteration of the team won't exist. You don't worry about getting older, because you're already old. The only thing that matters, the only thing is maximizing the number of legitimate championship level games you can put Stephen Curry in before his body says no more. And a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year who protects the rim, sets bone-crushing screens, and finishes lobs is, in the cold math of a closing window, exactly the kind of swing that makes sense even when it looks crazy. That's the detail. That's why the agent called. That's why Shams said it's real. Not because it's a smart long-term move. It absolutely is not. But because the Warriors have run out of long-term and all they have left is now. So here's where I leave it with you tonight, Warriors fans. The phone rang, the agent talked. Shams Charania went on ESPN and put his name on it. And the Golden State Warriors, a 37-win team that just got bounced in the play-in, a franchise staring down the end of the greatest run in modern NBA history, are seriously, genuinely considering bringing in Rudy Gobert to give Stephen Curry one last ride. It might be brilliant. It might be the move that turns a play-in team back into a contender overnight, that gives Curry the rim protection and the size he's never had in this twilight stretch. Or it might be the move that buries this franchise in luxury tax and apron prison for years, that ages badly, that becomes the cautionary tale they tell for the next decade. I genuinely don't know which one it is, and that's exactly why I need to hear from you. Is this the swing that saves the dynasty, or the panic move that ends it? Tell me in the comments, all of it, because I read every single one of them, and the second I hear anything else, the second this conversation takes its next step, I will be right back here telling you first. So subscribe right now, turn the notifications on, because the Bay Area is about to have the wildest summer it's had in years, and you are not going to want to find out what happens next from anybody but me.